Welcome back to the Left 4 Dead Hammer tutorial. What good is a table if there's nothing for it to hold? And what kind of first-person shooter doesn't have weapons? Let's kill two birds with one stone and add a shotgun on top of our table. Select the Entity tool again, and in the Options field type Weapon and select Weapon Pump Shotgun Spawn from the list. Go ahead and try and place the entity somewhere on the table. You'll notice you can't. The Entity tool can only drop entities on brushes, so place the shotgun entity somewhere on the floor near the table. If you're successful, you'll see a pump shotgun model placed on the floor. Using the nudging process you've learned, nudge the shotgun so it's on top of our table. Remember to hit escape to switch back to the selection tool before nudging. If you place the shotgun really far from the table, you can either raise the grid size up to nudge it further with a single nudge, or you can click and drag on the model in a 2D viewport to get it closer to the table before making finer adjustments. Once you have it on top of the table, look at the shotgun in your 3D viewport. I don't know about you, but that's not how gravity works in the real world. We're going to have to adjust it some more to make it look like it's realistically sitting on the table. With the selection tool active, click once inside the red and yellow lines surrounding the shotgun in a 2D view pane, and you'll notice the resizing handles have turned into circles. These circles mean you're in the rotating mode for the model. Using the handles and the 2D view panes, go ahead and rotate the model so it's on its side and angle it so it doesn't look like it's so rigidly placed on the table. You can still nudge the object while it's in rotation mode if you find that you need to make adjustments during rotation. You could now, in theory, compile the map and load it into Left 4 Dead, but what fun is just exploring one room? Let's make another room and connect it to the first and take a look at one last tool before we move on to compiling, the slicing tool. In the 3D view, go ahead and control left click all the brushes that make up the room, 4 walls and the floor, and if you want, you can select the light entity as well, or you'll have to place a new one once we copy the room. Zoom out a bit in your top 2D view so you can see the space surrounding the room. It would also be a good idea to change the grid size to something like 64 or 128 to make nudging the room easier. With everything selected, go ahead and shift nudge the room once to create the copy. Remember to let go of shift unless you want to create several unwanted rooms. If you do create an extra copy by mistake, you can undo the extra copies. Once you have your room nudged a ways off from your original room, go ahead and deselect it by hitting the escape key. Now you should have a space between the walls of your two rooms. Navigate your 3D view so it is back in your original room and face it at the wall that is closest to your copied room. Use the selection tool to select this wall, and once it's selected, activate the clipping tool. Zoom in with your top view in the center of the selected wall. You can find the center by looking at the X in the middle of the brush. Bring your grid size down to something reasonable like 16. Hopefully you should have a grid line that runs right through the X on your wall. With the clipping tool, click along the center line and drag across the wall to the opposite side. You should see a blue line appear between the 2 points. This line is where you will clip whatever brushes you have selected. Take a look at your wall brush. One half should be white and the other side across the line is red. If you hit enter now, you would keep the white part and the red part would be deleted. Sometimes this is desirable, but it's not what we want to do here. We want to keep both halves. Hold the shift key and press the X key. You'll notice that the white and red parts have flipped. Again, this would delete one half of the wall. If you press shift X again, you will now notice that both halves are white. This is what we want, so hit enter to split the brush. Hit escape twice to deselect the wall and return back to the selection tool. Go ahead and do the same thing to split the closest wall in the copied room. You won't have to hit shift and X though this time because Hammer remembers your preference for the slice tool, at least until you close Hammer. Now that you have your wall split, go ahead and select one half of one of the walls, and using the selection handles, move it so you create an opening between the halves. Go ahead and make the opening between the halves 128 units wide, as this is a good standard width for hallways. If you want, you can move both sections 64 units and keep the hallway centered in the room. Repeat the process for the other split wall and make sure that both openings line up. Once you have your openings, you can either use the block tool to draw a new set of walls and a ceiling and a floor, or you can use the copy methods to copy existing walls and floor brushes and resize them to fit the new opening. Remember, you can't have any overlapping brushes and no gaps are allowed or the map will not compile. So now you have your map with 2 rooms and a hallway. How do you load this into Left 4 Dead to play it? Open the File menu and go to the Run Map option. If you haven't saved the map up until this point, a save dialog will appear and you can name your map file. Once that's out of the way, you'll see the Run Map window. This window has three main options: Run BSP, Run Viz, and Run RAD. BSP stands for Binary Space Partition, and it's a technique used by game engines to slice up a map into more manageable pieces. The Source engine is a BSP-based engine, and all maps for Source games are stored as BSP files. Viz is a process that determines visibility calculations on your map. This helps your video card with rendering the map by telling it what parts of the map are visible from your current position and which are not, enabling it to limit what it needs to draw and improve performance. RAD stands for Radiosity and is used to calculate light maps for your map. Because the Source engine uses dynamic lighting, every light source must be calculated in a map to determine how it affects every surface. The more lighting sources and light types you have, the more work this has to do, and is easily the most time-consuming portion of the compilation process. For your own testing purposes, you can have BSP set to normal, Viz set to no, and RAD set to fast, although to release a map, you need to run all these on the normal setting to properly compile the map. Make sure your window also has toConsole, Dev, Console, and SVLAN1 set. It should by default, but if it doesn't, you need to add these for Hammer to properly launch the map into Left 4 Dead. Once everything is set, you can hit the OK button and Hammer will begin to compile the map. For a basic map of this size, it should only take a few seconds, but the larger and more complex a map gets, exponentially affects how long the compilation process can take, which is why I recommend having a very beefy system to compile on if you get serious about making maps. There's also one other tool that I don't cover here, but I do include in the tutorial documentation that can help with the compilation process if you have access to multiple computers and want to farm out the rendering work to them. Once the compilation process completes, Left 4 Dead should automatically load up and open the map, spawning you right in the room with the table from the spawn entity you placed earlier. You will get an error box that talks about nav errors and the map being unplayable. This is also the reason why there are no infected on the map and why the survivor bots don't work correctly. The reason for this is because Left 4 Dead uses something called nav meshes in order to do a lot of the AI related calculations. But creating a nav mesh is a more advanced topic and should only be performed once the geometry of a map is fully completed. In the related tutorial documentation, I include more information on nav meshes and some other advanced topics that you can move on to once you've mastered Hammer. Aside from that, you can click the continue button and go explore your map. And there you have it. You now know all the basics you need to be able to use Hammer to create a valid map, compile it, and launch it in Left 4 Dead. So get your creative juices flowing and go create some great player content for the Left 4 Dead community. Don't forget to check out the related tutorial documentation for a ton more information on making maps in Left 4 Dead.